All right, so when we talk about conic sections, this is where our conics come from. There are 4, and what happens is conic, the root word here would be cone, and so what we have is we have 2 cones tip to tip, and we have a plane that cuts through these cones. Well, if you have a plane that cuts through a cone that is parallel to the surface, to the base, then it's going to make a circle. It's going to make a complete circle, and obviously, depending on where we splice through the cone, depends on how big that circle is. So we can have different size circles. And then if we tilt it just a little bit, you're going to get an ellipse. And if you tilt it a little bit more, it's going to cut off this whole one side, which means you're going to get a parabola. And then if you have a plane cutting through vertically, you get what we call a hyperbola, which is 2 parabolas going opposite each other. So all of these have certain attributes that are related, that are linked. And if you keep that in mind, it kind of helps you throughout the chapter. So the first one we're going to talk about is the circle, and everybody says that this is the easy one, so that's a good thing. And I think that this is on your page that I asked you to print out, that cheat sheet that I asked you to print out. So a circle, the definition of the circle: a circle is a set of all points on a plane equidistant from a given fixed point called the center, and a line segment determined by the center and any point on the circle is called the radius. So the circle has 2 components. It has a center and it has a radius, and those are the only 2 components that we're concerned with as far as the circle. Okay, the center and the radius. Now, when we talk about equations for a circle, you'll see them written 2 different ways. This way is general form, and this way is standard form. General form is always equal to 0. General form is always equal to 0. Standard form is what we call workable form. If you see parentheses, it's in standard form. Okay? So on the test, I may say, write the equation of a circle in general form given this center and this radius. And that's your goal. If I ask you to write it in general form, this would be your goal. If I ask you to write it in standard form, this would be your goal. Okay? Now, in standard form, again, this is workable form. So if you see parentheses, that's a good thing. That's a good setup. If you see it set equal to 0, just start shaking your head because it's a lot of algebra. Your center is an ordered pair. It's a point because this is graphing. We have a circle on a graph, and the center is a point. It's an ordered pair. Okay? Typically, we call ordered pairs x, y. Well, because of our forms, you can see by calling this center x, y, it would get a little confusing, right? So instead, what we do is we call our x coordinate h and our y coordinate k. And you need to remember this all the way through the whole entire chapter 13. H goes with x, always. In every single conic that we do, remember I told you there are relations throughout the chapter? X and H always will go together. X and H will always go together. Y and K will always go together. K is your y coordinate. H is your x coordinate. Okay? So if I give you an equation in standard form, and I say, tell me the center. Tell me the center of the circle given the equation of the circle in standard form. Well, right here's your x coordinate, and right here's your y coordinate. So all you have to do is tell me those numbers. However, notice these minus signs in front of them, so you have to take the opposite of what you see. That's another commonality for the whole entire chapter. If you see a minus symbol, a minus sign in front of anything in your formulas, if you see a minus sign, that means take the opposite of what you see. Okay? So, if I gave you, and we're going to do this in a minute, if I gave you an equation of a circle in standard form, and this said x minus 3, what would h actually be? 3. And it said y plus 2. It would be negative 2. And there's your center of your circle. Okay? And then, for your radius. Your radius is over here, and the radius can be a little tricky as well because in standard form, if you see a number, so for example, if that said is equal to 49, what is your actual radius? 7. You would have to take the square root of it, okay? So if it's in standard form, number one, you have to take the opposite of your HKs, and you have to take the square root of that constant, because given it's the r squared, your radius squared. So to actually give me the radius, you would take the square root. Okay? So let's look at this. Let's start off by writing the equation. It says, write the equation of the circle that satisfies the stated condition. And this is exactly how you'll see it on your test in 2 weeks after Thanksgiving. This is a perfect question of exactly how you'll see it written on your test. Okay? Write the equation of the circle that satisfies the stated condition. Express the final answer in this form. Which form am I asking for? General form. Okay, so you don't stop doing your algebra until you have it set equal to 0. All right? So, where are you going to start? Remember when I was talking about the two forms, I told you there's a workable form and a non-workable form. Which form is workable? Standard form is workable. So what I want you to do on your paper is I want you to write the standard form for a circle. Write the standard form for a circle. It's here for you if you didn't write it down a while ago. X minus h quantity squared plus y minus k quantity squared is equal to r squared. And that's where you're going to start. Anytime you need to write an equation, start with your standard form. Start with your standard form. So, we have x minus h quantity squared plus y minus k quantity squared is equal to r squared. So what is h? Here's h. What is k? 3. Okay? If I actually give you the ordered pair, h is what you see. But if you're having to pull it out of the formula, that's when you're going to take it opposite. Okay? And then, of course, your radius is 4. So now watch. You're going to have x minus. That comes from the formula. You're copying the formula exactly how you see it. But you're going to plug in h, k, and r. You're going to copy the formula exactly how you see it, but you're going to plug in, replace, substitute for h, k, and r. Okay? So I have x minus, h is a negative 1. Do you see how I did that? And then we're going to square that, plus y minus k, which is 3 squared, is equal to 4 squared. So you write the formula exactly how you see it, and then you just replace h, k, and r, which was given to you. From here, pure algebra. Pure algebra. Okay? So do you see any parentheses in our goal? Do you see any parentheses in general form? No. So my first hint would be, get rid of those parentheses. Get rid of those parentheses. Let's simplify this in here so that we can. X plus 1 quantity squared, not anything you can do here, is equal to 4 squared. Okay, so don't answer this out loud because I don't want you to embarrass yourself. On your paper, see if you can do x plus 1 quantity squared and y minus 3 quantity squared. See if you can get rid of those parentheses. Do the algebra. Go. X plus 1 quantity squared. Hopefully you got x squared plus 2x plus 1 plus y squared minus 6y plus 9 is equal to 16. Remember, when you have a binomial squared, and if you didn't get it right, don't feel bad. I still have calculus students that do this. If you have a binomial squared, you have to expand it and pull it, or know the pattern of square double square. Okay? But please, do not make the mistake of writing x squared plus 1 and y squared plus 9. That's wrong. Okay? Expand it and pull it. Okay. Now, to get it in general form, all of our parentheses are gone. So to get it in general form, what I need to do is I need to write it in descending order, and it's what I have in the box up there. And I think it may be on your cheat sheet that I asked you to print out. If not, go ahead and write general form on there, because that would be something that you need to put on your index card. But to get it in general form, let's put it in descending order. So we're going to have x squared plus y squared plus 2x minus 6y. And then look at all of our constants. We have a 1 and a 9, which is going to be 10. But then we got to bring this 16 over, right? So we have 9 plus 1, which is 10, and then 10 minus 16 is going to give us negative 6 is equal to 0. And there you have the equation of that circle in general form. Any questions? All right, before we go here, let's try this one. It says write an equation of a circle with the center a negative 1, 2, and passing through a point at 3, negative 5. What's missing? The radius. Remember, anytime you're dealing with a circle, you need to know two things. You need to know the center and you need to know the radius. Well, I gave you the center. The center is here. It's HK, negative 1, 2. But I did not give you the radius. I did not give you the radius. So, you can do one of two things. I heard that you could use the distance formula. If you want to use the distance formula, that's fine. But watch this. A typical ordered pair is labeled as what? And so if I did x minus h quantity squared plus y minus k quantity squared, that keeps you from having to know the distance formula. So you're going to have x is going to be 3 minus h, which is going to be technically plus 1 squared. And then y, which is going to be negative 5 minus k squared. And then we're looking for your y. So again, I mean, if you want to learn the distance formula, that is one way to skin the cat, but here's the other. So you're going to have 4 squared plus negative 7 squared is equal to r squared. So we have 16 plus 49 is equal to r squared. 16 and 49 is going to be what? Is equal to r squared. And so your radius, okay, your radius is, well, we'll just leave it as square root of 65, but let me explain to you why. What I'm asking you to do is I'm asking you to write an equation of the circle, and notice I didn't tell you which form to put it in. Okay? So what I want you to do is I want you to put the equation of this circle in standard form. Put the equation of this circle in standard form. In order to write an equation, what two things must you know? Center and the radius. Do you now know those? Do it. Write the center of the circle in standard form. Or, I'm sorry, write the equation of the circle. Write the equation of your circle in standard form. So your goal that's your goal. What are you going to plug in for? The radius, your HK, and nope. What are the only two things you need to know in order to write an equation of a circle? Center and the radius. So I don't need this to write my equation anymore. Now that I know the radius, I don't need x and y anymore. Right? So what is it going to be? Excellent. So, do you understand why I wrote 65 instead of the square root of 65? You got to know your formula. In standard form, it's equal to r squared. So we need that r squared. You're going to square your radius. Okay? So, for example, let's go here. What I want you to do, and you've already done it, if I asked you to write the equation of the circle in standard form for this particular problem right here, do you see that answer? It's right here. Of course, this would be 16. This right here would be 16. So if I had asked you to write it in standard form, you would have stopped here, but of course you would have written 16. Same thing here. If I asked you to write it in standard form, that's what you would write. Okay? So, you've got to keep in mind, in order to write an equation of a circle, whether it's in standard form or in general form, you've got to know the center and you've got to know the radius. You can't go anywhere until you do. I gave you the center, but you had to find the radius. So, that's how it gets kind of tricky, I guess, depending on what I give you. Okay, so let's graph these. Graph these, and I'll just go ahead and give you a heads up. I am not a Picasso. I am not an artist. So, I apologize ahead of time. I will not be able to make a perfect circle, but guess what? Neither will you. So there. Alright. So, look. When you're dealing with a circle, you only need two things. You need a center and you need a radius. Whether you're writing an equation or whether you're graphing it, those are the only two things you need, is the center and the radius. So look at this equation that I gave you. It's in standard form. So you don't know math involved. No math involved. Well, kind of. Your center is HK. Can you tell me what H is? It is 2, and then K is -5. Do the opposite of what you see. Why? Because there's negatives in the formula. Take the opposite of what you see. So H is 2, and K is going to be -5. Now, watch this. 4 is actually R squared, because that's what your formula says. Look at your cheat sheet. That's why I asked you to print it out. Okay, in standard form, that last number, that constant on the right, is actually R squared. So what would R be? 2. Okay? So let's plot this. Hopefully you know how to plot an ordered pair. 2, -5. 2, -5. There's your center. And then the radius is 2. And how you do this is completely and totally up to you. But to me, the radius is the distance. Remember the definition of a circle? The radius is the distance from the center to the edge of the circle. Well, I can draw straight lines in 4 directions. Up, left, down, and right. And that's what I would do. So I would go 2 up, 2 left, 2 down, 2 right. So there's 4 radii. And then you connect the dots, and this is why it won't be a circle. It usually turns out to be a diamond, but that's okay. I'll do my best. There you go. So again, if I give it to you in standard form, it's not that bad. All you got to do is pick out your H, pick out your K, make sure you take the opposite of what you see, and then square root your radius, and then put it on your graph. So it's not that bad. The hiccup is when I don't give it to you in standard form. Okay, that's when it gets a little crazy, such as this. So if I give it to you in general form, you cannot pick out your H, pick out your K, and know what your radius is without putting it in standard form. Now, I will tell you this. Some of you little Einsteins that are sitting in here, when we start doing a couple of these, you'll be able to figure out a shortcut. And yes, there is a shortcut. Okay? So I'm not going to tell it to you. You figure it out. All right. So, listen. Anytime I give you an equation in general form and I ask you to find the center and the radius, if I give you an equation in general form and I ask you to find the center and the radius, you've got to get general form into standard form. So, a while ago, we had standard form and we needed to go to general form, and what was the first thing we got rid of? You remember? What was the first thing we got rid of? Those parentheses. So now, what do you think I need? I need some parentheses. And so what you're going to do is you're going to make an X grouping, and you're going to make a Y grouping. And then you're going to move your constant to the other side. So watch this. Anything that has an X, put it in a group. So we'll have X squared minus 8X. Plus, because in standard form, look at your cheat sheet. In standard form, there's a plus sign in between them. Okay, look at that cheat sheet. So you have x squared minus 8x plus. Now let's do the y grouping. You have y squared plus 10y. And then I'm going to move that 16 over to the right, which is going to turn it into negative 16, right? Okay, so is this standard form? Square has to be on the outside. Square has to be on the outside. So, this is where algebra comes into play. Do you remember from 100 when we were doing something in chapter 6? Only a couple of you haven't gone here. But in chapter 6, I told you there's a horrible, horrible thing called completing the square that we don't use until you get to 112. Guess what? We're there. All right. So, completing the square. Let's see if you remember how to complete the square. And this is what I say do. You don't have to do this. This is just how I keep up with it. What you're going to do with your x grouping is you're going to make a little blank. And with an equation, how do you keep an equation balanced? What you do one side, you have to do the other side. Well, I added 2 blanks on the left-hand side, did I not? Well, guess what? I'm going to add 2 blanks on the right-hand side. Now, let's see how many of you remember how to complete the square. In your x grouping, what goes in the blank? So what you going to get? Half of 8 is 4, and 4 squared is? There you go. That goes in the blank. Half of b and square it. And since I put it on the left-hand side, notice I put it on the right-hand side. You add 16 on one side, to balance it up, you got to add 16 on the other. So you take half of that middle term, always, half of b and square it. So half of 8 is 4, and 4 squared is 16. So what goes in the blank with the y grouping? Very good. 25. Half of 10 is 5, and 5 squared is 25. Okay, so Heather pointed out that the square was on the inside. Well, it's still on the inside. What is the whole point of completing the square?
We'll move the square outside.
Well, when you complete the square, what does it make? A perfect square trinomial. And a perfect square trinomial will always factor into a binomial squared. A binomial squared. So when you complete the square, it makes a perfect square trinomial, and a perfect square trinomial will always factor into identical binomials. So, for example, this is what's going on. X squared minus 8x plus 16 will factor into x minus 4 times x minus 4, which can be written like that. So our x grouping is good to go. So your y grouping is going to be what? And on the right-hand side, what do you get? There's your standard form. A lot of algebra. A whole lot of algebra. For you, sure. Go right ahead. All right. So, what is the center? 4, -5. Take the opposite. What you see? And what is your radius? Okay. So find the center and the length of the radius of the given circle. If it's given to you in standard form, all you got to do is pick it out. If it's given to you in general form, you got to do a whole lot of algebra. Okay? All right, so let's look at this one. When you see something like this, you may think, oh my. But one question on your final exam will be, and I think it's on your study guide as well. But one question on your final exam is, it's going to give you an equation and it's going to ask you which conic is this. Okay? Well, if you see a conic that has two squared terms and your leading coefficients are the same, or your coefficients are the same, okay? If you see an equation that has two squared terms, the x squared and the y squared, and the coefficients of those squared terms are the same, are identical, it's going to be a circle. Okay? So, every problem that we've done, you can see x squared, y squared, coefficients are 1. That's in standard form, but you can look down through 21 through 31, 21 through 31 in your book, and you can see the x squares and the y squares and the coefficients are the same. Even for 30 and 31, you have 4 of the coefficients, but they're still exactly the same. So when that happens, you are looking at a circle. So don't forget that for your final exam. Okay? Now, this, I know it's a circle. I know it's a circle aside from the fact that it says that. But if this was on the final and it said name this conic, you would know that it's a circle because you have x squared, y squared, and coefficients are the same. This one says find the center and the length of the radius of the given circle. What form is this? It's general form because it's set equal to 0. Remember I told you, if it's set equal to 0, it's going to be general form, period. Okay? In order to pick out your center and radius, which form do you need? Standard form. What was the first thing you did in order to get the standard form? You made an X grouping. You made a Y grouping. Don't write this down because it's absolutely crazy. And you moved the 20 over. Right? That was your first step. Then your next step was what? You had to complete the square. Well, how do you complete the square? You take half of the middle term and square it. Do you have a middle term? So if something's missing, what is it understood to be? 0. So your center is 0, 0. And your radius is the square root of 20, which I am going to totally expect you to write as 2 root 5. You know how to rationalize a radical, right? If not, that's chapter 5 of your book. Okay? So, if, look at number 23 that Tricia did up for us on the board. Number 23, notice you have a 10x and a 14y. If you have linear terms, not squared terms, but linear terms, and that's your 10x and your 14y. If you have linear terms, it's not at the center. It's not going to be 0, 0. If one of them is missing, so for example, if that 14y was missing, guess what?
It's on the y-axis.
Well, no, your h is there, but your k is going to be missing. If your y linear term is missing, in other words, if that had said x squared plus y squared plus 10x plus 73 equals 0, the 14x is gone. Your y is 0. Your k is 0. So if either of the linear terms are missing, you don't even have to complete the square form. It's 0. And when they're both missing, it is at the origin. It's going to be 0, 0. So look in your books. Let's see if we can find one. Look at number 24. Look at number 24. Which linear term is missing, your x or your y? Your x. Therefore, your h is going to be 0. Look at number 25. Which one's missing? The y is missing, and therefore your k is going to be 0. So, for number 24, how would I find k? You know that h is 0 because the x linear term is missing. How would you find k? Complete the square. you have to complete the square for it. Okay? Let's try that. Let's try number 25. Try number 25. What is it? 3 times. Okay, so what you would do is you would divide everything, every term by 3. Divide every term by 3. And then your center is going to be what? And then your radius is going to be? So again, it's really simple, but when you have that coefficient out there, people are like, what? Are we good? All right, so let's start with parabolas. And you have parabolas on that cheat sheet that I asked you to print out. But what I need you to notice is there are 4 different ways. A circle, there's only one way to do a circle. It's round, period. Okay? Parabola, however, a parabola can open up, it can open down, which we've already dealt with, right? In chapter 8, we dealt with parabolas that can open down. Now what we're going to do is we're going to deal with parabolas opening left and right as well. So, as far as your formulas are concerned, on the left-hand side of that sheet, it shows you where here, parabola opens right if P is greater than 0, in other words, if P is positive, left if P is negative, and then for opens down, or up, up if P is positive, and down if P is negative. So what the heck is this P? Look over here in your formula. You have 2 different formulas that you need to be concerned with. Okay? 2 different formulas that you need to be concerned with. And the 2 that are on here are in standard form. Obviously, because you see the parentheses, right? So the very top one where it says equation, that's your formula. That's your standard form for an equation. Okay, that's your standard form for an equation, the very top one of each section. Now, what I need you to understand is this. You only see 1 square term. Okay? Remember I told you, with a circle, you'll see 2 square terms. But with a parabola, you'll only see 1 square term. And either your x will be squared, or your y will be squared. And that's what you need to be looking for. Is my x squared or is my y squared? That's the first thing. When you see an equation that has only 1 square term, you need to ask yourself, which one's squared? Is it x or is it y? Because that tells you which formula you're working off of. If it's your y squared, is your y squared, then we off that top set. In other words, your parabola is no matter what. Okay? If it's your x that's squared, you're going off of this bottom set, which is the one you've already done, and they open up and down. Okay? So, can be a little confusing unless you know what's going on. Alright, so here is a parabola. I know we did parabolas in chapter 8, but we're going to go even more in detail now. Okay? Yeah, but we're not going to do those. Those are hyperbolas, and we're not there yet. Okay, so you have what we talked about in chapter 8, I believe. You have a vertex. Remember the vertex from chapter 8? I think we talked about axis of symmetry. Yes? And then 2 points that are mirror images. That's what we talked about in chapter 8. The vertex, the axis of symmetry, and then 2 mirror images. Well, now we're going to throw something else in there called the focus. The focus. And the directrix. That's 2 things that are new. Okay? Now, the distance between your 2 points that are mirror images is called a primary focal chord. And I'm going to ask you on the test, I'm going to ask you to label every single one of these. For every parabola that you draw for me, I'm going to ask you to label every single one of these. Okay? So, a parabola is defined as the set of all points equidistant from a fixed point called your focus. So, for example, the distance from here to this point and from here to this point is exactly the same. But watch this. If I had a mirror image here, guess what? The distance from the focus to here and from the focus to here is exactly the same distance. Okay? So, the distance from the focus to your 2 points is exactly, your 2 mirror images, I guess you could say, are exactly the same. Okay? Now, a fixed line called the directrix, which you can draw a right angle to. So, your directrix would be here. So, for example, your distance from your focus to here is the same as is from here to here is the same. So, this is the same distance, and this is the same distance. So you need to know where the focus is, and you need to know where the directrix is. Now, something that you need to write on your index card if you want to, your directrix will always be behind. Always be behind the parabola. Your directrix will always be behind the parabola. Your focus will always be on the inside of your parabola. Your focus will always be on the inside of your parabola, and your directrix will always be on the outside behind it. Your vertex is right smack dab in between both of them. So you can take the distance from your focus to your directrix, half it, and that's going to be your vertex. Every time. Alright, the line through the focus and perpendicular to the directrix, that's your axis of symmetry. We've already talked about that. The point on the axis of symmetry halfway between the focus and the directrix, I just said that is your vertex. It's the maximum or minimum of the parabola. You need to know that for calculus. And a line segment that contains the focus and whose endpoints are on the parabola is the primary focal chord. And you're going to need to know all of these. So, parabolas, just to be honest with you, parabolas are the hardest ones because it's so much crap that you have to know. So much stuff. Crap. Okay, so let's take baby steps. Let's go with ones that we're already familiar with. Let's go with ones that are up and down. Okay, going with ones that are up and down. So, standard forms of a parabola have vertical symmetry. Basically, what I need you to know is this. If it opens up or down, your x is going to be squared. Remember what I told you. In a parabola, you're only going to have one that's squared, and you need to know which one. If it's going up and down, it's going to be the x's. The x is going to be squared. All right? Now, what's the difference between these two? Well, this number right here, there's going to be a number. It's going to look like this. It's going to look like x minus 3 squared is equal to 8 times y minus k. Okay? This one, I know, is going to open up because 8 is positive. The number that's in front of your non-squared grouping, if it's positive, it's going to open up. If it's negative, it's going to open down. See? If it's negative, it's going to open down. So if you had something that said x minus 3 squared is equal to negative 8 times y minus k, that would open down. So that's the only difference with these two. One opens up, one opens down. Now, your vertex is at HK. Does that look familiar to you? Should, because your center of your circle is what? HK. Commonalities. Commonalities. Your vertex is HK. So the vertex for this parabola would be what? I guess I can even give you a number for K. Yeah, 3 and K. Let's try 1. Okay. And again, those minus, that's what I was just looking for. Your minus signs are still there, so you're going to take the opposite of what you see, so be careful with that. So this one's pretty straightforward. Okay? Remember, H always goes with X. Because look, in your standard form, they're separated, whereas in the circle they were together. They were on the same side. But here, they're separated. H always goes with X. Wherever X is, there's H. Wherever K is, there's Y. They always go together. So that's your H and your K. This is where I kind of stray from the cheat sheet. All of these are on your cheat sheet, so you can use them if you want to, as long as you put them on your index card. So what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to write the vertex of every one of the parabolas. So I will say, find the vertex. Vertex is HK, you already know that. I'm also going to say, find the focus. Well, if you have a parabola that opens up, and I know it opens up because of this right here. If you have a parabola that opens up, and my vertex is at 3, 1, where do you think the focus is going to be? Is it going to be up here, or is it going to be back here? It's going to be up here. How high? Well, watch this. And that's a little off. But P is the distance from your vertex or your focus, or your vertex and your directrix. So how am I going to find P? What number in my equation represents 4P? 8. So you have 8 equals 4P. So what is P? So if I know that this parabola is going to open up, I'm going to go 2 up, and there's my focus. So my focus is going to be 3, 2. How did I do that? I found P. P is the distance from your vertex to your focus and your vertex and your directrix. Now, Miss Adams, I have no idea what that you're doing. Okay, that's fine. Look on your sheet that I asked you to print out. You have 2 equations for your parabola, right? You have 2 equations. You have one that has the y grouping squared, and you have one that has the x grouping squared. We are looking at what? The x grouping one has to be. The x grouping that is squared. We're looking at these right here. So one more down. Look, it says vertex, HK. You already know that. You should already know that. Then it says focus. Focus is going to be H. H is H. And then K plus P. So you got to know what P is. And that's how you're going to find it. The number in front of your non-squared grouping says it equals 4P and 5. So you got to know what P is regardless. Well, this one says take your K. Watch this. Take your K. K is 1. And add P to it. 1. And I don't know how to count. So that should be a 3. Take your K and add P to it. 2 plus 1 is 3. Well, look, I've already got it here. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. There's your focus. So your directrix, that's going to be the next thing I'm going to ask you for, is going to be K minus P, which is going to be 1 minus 2, which is going to be what? Negative 1. It's right here. But K is a line. It's not a point, it's a line. Can you tell me the equation of that line? So if I ask you, what is the directrix? You're going to give me an equation of a line because the directrix is a line. It's a line. So this one in particular is going to be y equals negative 1. Axis of symmetry, probably not going to ask you for that. P is very vital. You've got to know what that is. It's the distance from the vertex and tells whether the parabola opens up or down. And then the last thing I'm going to ask you for is the primary focal chord. The primary focal chord. Primary focal chord is the absolute value of 4P. So for this problem that we made up, what is the primary focal chord? Down here, what would the primary focal chord be? Absolute value. It's still going to be 8. So how am I going to use that to actually graph this? Because that's what we need. We need to be able to pick all these out and then put it on a graph. Well, focus, I have the vertex, and I have the directrix. The only thing I need is the actual parabola. Okay? Look. Primary focal chord goes through which point? The focus or the vertex? Primary focal chord goes through the focus. The parabola goes through the vertex. Do you understand that? Primary focal chord goes through the focus. Primary focal chord goes through the focus. And then your vertex, your parabola actually goes through the vertex. So watch this. 8. 8 is the complete distance. The complete distance from one side to the other. So if I start at the focus, how many am I going to count left and how many am I going to count right? 4. Okay? Don't do 16. That's going to be gigantuan. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. If I can count. And then 1, 2, 3, 4 this way. So there's your primary focal chord. And watch. There is your parabola. Kind of, sort of. Okay. It's a lot to take in. Now listen to me. The key is to be able to figure out what P is. If you don't know what P is, you're not going to be able to do it. And people always get hung up. I can't find it. I don't know what it is. I don't know how to get it. So before we leave this slide, does everybody understand how to find P? The distance from your vertex to your focus and your vertex to your directrix. It's the exact same thing. Yes? No? You take the number in front of your non-squared term and set it equal to 4p. You take the number in front of your non-squared term and set it equal to 4p. And then solve for p.
Would it always be 4p or just
Always. This number will change. 4p is in your formula. It's part of your formula. Your formulas never change. Never change. Okay, so here's a perfect test question. Find the vertex, focus, directrix, and then graph it. Oh, and I need to throw in the primary focal chord too. So I want you to find the vertex, the focus, the directrix, and the primary focal chord. Okay, so I see some looks. You have 2 equations, right? What did I tell you a while ago? What did I tell you? How many squared terms are you going to see in a parabola? Just one, and you need to ask yourself what? Which one? Which one? It's your x. So go on your formula sheet, and you have 2 equations on the right-hand side. One of them has the y grouping squared, and the other one has the x grouping squared. Do you see it? This is the one that you should be looking at. That's the one you should be looking at. Do you understand why? What's wrong, Tom? You're going to start in standard form. The one that I give you, no. But in order to graph it, you need it in standard form. All right. What's missing? How do you know H and K is missing, Tom? There's no parentheses. No parentheses means 0. No parentheses means 0. So your vertex is 0, 0. Your vertex is 0, 0. Look at this one. Do you see parentheses? What would your vertex be? Parentheses mean you do have values. Parentheses mean you do have H and K. Parentheses mean that the vertex is not at the origin. No parentheses, 0. No parentheses, 0. Okay, in order to find the focus, what do you have to know? P. You have to know P. Can you tell me, Ty, you cannot speak. Can you tell me the equation in order to find P? See, I told you. That's always the hiccup. We want the absolute value. Okay? And just don't worry about the sign. Okay, don't worry about the sign. Just take that number and go with it. So now we know P is 3. Now, okay, let me rephrase. If you are going to use your formula page, and like I said, this is where I go away from the formula page. If you're going to use the formulas page, P is -3. You do need that sign. But for my purposes, the way I do it, I don't use the sign. Because when I see that -12, I automatically know the direction of the parabola. Is it up or down? It's down. I already know that. If 12 is negative, that number in front of that Y grouping is negative, I know it's going down. I don't need that. However, if you're going to go straight off that formula page, you do need to know P is -3. But if you're going to go the way I'm doing it, you don't need to know that. Okay? And let me show you why. Put your vertex on the graph. Put your vertex on the graph. 0, 0. And the next thing that we've got to find is the focus, right? The next thing that we've got to find is the focus. So think with me. This parabola opens down, and my focus is always found where?
Inside.
On the inside. So if this parabola opens down, where do you think the focus is going to be? Down how many? 3. So, 1, 2, 3. There's your focus. And that ordered pair is going to be 0, -3. Now again, if you use the formula, and I don't even know the formula, because I don't use it, you need a -3 there. Okay? Okay? If my focus is on the inside of the parabola, where's the directrix? Behind it. In this case, it would be up above it, right? How many units up? 3. From what? From your vertex, right here. So we're going to go up 1, 2, 3. And your directrix is what? Is it an ordered pair or a line? It is a line. So here's your directrix. Yeah. Infinitely many, in fact. What is the equation of this line? So you got the directrix. Primary focal chord. Primary focal chord is what? Absolute value of. So your primary focal chord is going to be 12. So off of which point and how many units am I going? 6 off of the vertex or the focus? Focus. Think about it. Primary focal chord goes off the focus. In the name. Okay? Primary focal chord goes off the focus. And so we're going to go off the focus 6 to the left and 6 to the right. And this is a very wide parabola. And a very bumpy one too. That's okay. Yes?
So your primary focal chord, you took 12 and halved it and then distributed it on either side.
Of your focus, yes. Yep. The whole length of your primary focal chord is 12. And focus is half of it. So you're going to go 6 to the right and 6 to the left. Now again, this is key, and I'm going to say it one more time. If you choose to use that formulas page, great, but you need to use your phone with key. I don't, because I don't use the formula. I don't even know the formula. I mean, I'm just being honest. I don't use them. I don't know them. Because I go off the graph. To me, it's easier to go play with the graph and go that way. It's half. Primary focal chord is 12. I don't know. That's a good question that we can play around with. If you'll remember back to the definition of a parabola, you'll answer your own question. Okay, I'll answer it for you. Yes. Okay, so let's go with this one. We're going to find the vertex, the focus, the directrix, the primary focal chord, and we're going to graph it. The vertex we've already picked out, okay? But look, let's just start fresh. Let's just act like we don't, we're just oblivious. Let's just start fresh, okay? So you come across this problem on the test. First of all, you got to figure out which conic is it. Is it a circle? Is it a parabola? Is it an ellipse? Is it a hyperbola? It's a parabola because parabolas are the only one that have one square term. It is a parabola. It's the only one that has one square term. All the rest of them have two squares. Okay? Or two square terms. So this is a parabola. So once you know it's a parabola, what's the first thing you need to ask yourself? Which one is squared? And this one is, your x's are squared, so that tells you which formula you're going to use if you choose. Okay? So that tells me that I'm looking at x minus h quantity squared is equal to 4p times y minus k. That's the one you should be looking at. Okay? So now, your vertex is HK, but it's opposite of what you see because of the minus signs in your formula. It's opposite of what you see because of the minus signs that are in your formula on your formulas page. So your H is what? 2, and your K is what? -3. All right, the next thing we need to know is the focus. What do I need to know in order to know the focus? P. You got to know P. Tell me the equation to find P. And so P is going to be a stinking fraction, but that's okay. It's 3/2. You can do a decimal. That's fine. If you're more comfortable with decimals, that's fine. Because the whole point is to get it graphed, and if it's easier for you to graph a decimal, go for it. That's fine. Okay, so P is 3/2 or 1 1/2 or 1.5, whichever you prefer. Okay, the next thing that, in order to find the focus, you got to know P. And then the next thing you got to know is, does this thing open up or down? It does open down because 6 is negative, right? So it does open down. So let's put the vertex on here. So we're at 2, -3. So there's my vertex. Your focus is going to be found where? Inside. And if this thing's going down, where's your focus going? It's going down as well. So go from your vertex 1.5. From your vertex, go 1.5 down. So we're guesstimating, okay? So the focus is going to be 2 and -4.5. -4.5. Whatever you want. -9/2. Whatever. There's your focus. Next thing we got to find is our directrix. Where is the directrix? Behind it. So we're going to go 1.5 up, and your directrix is a line. Please do not forget that. So what's the equation of this line? Y equals negative 1.5. And then we need to know the primary focal chord so we know how wide to draw this thing. What's the primary focal chord going to be? Off of which point? Focus. How many units to the left? And how many units to the right? And you've done it. Yay. Again, if you're going to use the formulas on that formulas page and you're going to transfer those over onto your card, make sure you understand that you do need to sign those P. Okay, it's either going to be positive or negative depending on what's going on here. Depending on what that 4P number is. Oh no. Oh no, it's in general form. You do. You have to put this in standard form. You've got to put this in standard form. So, our goal is this. That's our goal. Okay? So this is a little harder than the circles because we've got to separate things. And when I say separate, I mean some things have to be on the left side of the equal sign, some things have to be on the right hand side. So again, ask yourself, number one, if this was the final exam or if this was a conics test, which conic are we looking at? Parabola. Why? There's only one squared term. Which one? X. Therefore, we know that it's either going to go up or down. At this point, we don't know because it's in general form. Well, okay, it's in general form. You should know, but anyway. Look at your goal. Look at your standard form. This is what I need. And remember at the beginning of this lesson I told you X and H are the same thing. They go together. Okay? So, the only thing I want on the left-hand side is anything that has an X in it. Everything else I want to go to the right. One more time. The only thing I want on the left-hand side is anything that has an X in it. Everything else needs to go to the right. Why? Why is it the only thing that I want on the left-hand side is what has an X? Because that's what's squared. If that's what's squared, that's the only thing we need on the left-hand side. So, X squared is going to stay on the left-hand side. And so I'm going to have X squared is equal to negative 8y minus 16. Well, crap, I still don't have parentheses. I gotta have parentheses. Close.
One X is 0.
For your vertex, yes. So we're going to factor out a negative 8. And we've got it. Now it's in standard form. Now it's in standard form. No. So it's not in standard form. Now it's in standard form. Okay. What is the vertex? 0, negative 2. 0, negative 2. What do I need in order to find the focus? So we're going to do 8 is equal to 4p, right? So p is 2. So let's go to the graph. 0, negative 2. Is this thing going to open up or down? It's going to open down, so my focus is going to be how many units? 2 down. So there's my focus. This is my vertex. And my directrix is going to be 2 up. Alright, so let's get that on here. The focus is going to be 0, -4. And the directrix is going to be y equals 0. Last thing I need is the primary focal chord. And there it is. Now, all the ones that we've done have gone down. Obviously, there's some that are going to go up. But the ones that go down, we haven't really dealt with much of those. So, what's next? See if you can do this one by yourself. Well, this one's kind of hard. So I'll do it with you. Okay. But we can walk together through it, right? Which conic is this? It's a parabola, and that's easy right now because we're doing the parabolas, right? So, but if it was on a test, how would you know it's a parabola? Only one squared term. Which one? X. So what's the only thing I need on the left-hand side? Anything that has an X in it. So x squared needs to stay on the left-hand side. Minus 6x needs to stay on the left-hand side. But that 3 needs to go over here. Okay. Now what?
Complete the square for X.
Yeah, complete the square on the left-hand side. You've got to complete the square. So, you're going to have x squared minus 6x plus what? 9. Half of 6 squared is going to be 9. Is going to be 2y plus 3 plus 9. And then on the right-hand side, on the left-hand side, what am I going to get? X minus 3. And on the right-hand side, I'm going to get 2y plus, well, almost there. What do I need to do? Down there. A lot of algebra. Number 1, you got to know how to complete the square. Number 2, you got to know how to factor. Number 3, you got to know how to work your way around the parabola. Okay? A lot of algebra. Alright, so let's go. Vertex. And go ahead and put it on the graph. 3, -6. It's there. Focus. What do I need to know in order to find the focus? P. So how am I going to find that? What's the formula? Or what's the equation? 2 equals 4p. So p is going to be equal to 1/2, 0.5, whatever. All right. This parabola goes up or down? It's going to go up because 2 is positive. It's going to go up because this 2 is positive. So I'm going to go 1/2 for my focus. I'm going to go 1/2. I'm going to go 1/2 a unit up. So we're going to go 3 and -5.5. Or -5.5, whatever. So my directrix, where am I going to go? You're going to go 1/2 down. So here's the directrix. So that's going to be, the directrix is going to be y is equal to -6.5, -6.5, whatever. And the last thing, primary focal chord, what's it going to be? 2. So we're going to go off the focus, 1 in each direction. This is a little bitty parabola. There you go. right, I want to go ahead and talk about the ones that open right and left, and then we're going to work on our own, because I kind of want to jumble them up so that you can see how to do this on a test, in a test situation. All right? The reason I want to do this is because it's the exact same thing, except now your y is going to be squared. Okay? Your y is going to be squared, and this gets a little confusing because k always goes with y. And I guarantee you when I ask you to write your vertex, you're going to put k in the x coordinate. Don't do it. I know it's confusing. Think. Okay, don't just blindly go through there. K goes with y. And if y is squared, k is the y coordinate that's over there with it. Okay? And obviously if this number is positive, it's going to open to the right. And if this number is negative, it's going to open to the left. Everything else is exactly the same. Everything else is exactly the same. All right?
Switched out to X and Y.
Mm-hmm. So, what is the vertex on this? 0, 0. Why? There's no parentheses, and I can't make parentheses. Okay, I can't complete the square, I can't factor, can't do anything like that. So there's no parentheses, and I can't make parentheses. Okay, so the vertex is here. So now I got to find the focus. What do I need to know in order to find the focus? What is the equation in order to find the focus? A equals 4p, or p is 4p is equal to 8, whatever. So p is going to be 2. Now, is this thing going to open right or left?
Right, because it's positive.
It's going to go to the right because 8 is positive. So it is going to go to the right. So for my p, for the focus, am I going to go to the right or to the left? You're going to go to the right. Why? Because think, if this parabola opens to the right, the focus has got to be on the inside, so you got to go to the right to get the focus on the inside. Okay? And then if it's going to go to the left, or the focus, Jiminy Crickets. So your focus is going to be what? 2, 0. The directrix, 2 units to the left, it's here. So what is the equation for this? Very good. And then the last thing we need is the primary focal chord, which is going to be? 8. Yeah. All for the focus. We're going to go 4 up. And we're going to go 4 down. And so this is going to go on top. So it's the same concept. Just make sure you understand that where H and K are going to be. That's the hardest part. Make sure you understand where H and K are going to be. You can, but it's not necessary. You can make it as pretty as you want. Oh. You remember what? Walk me through this one, Ty. You can also work. It is parabola. Y squared. Good. Very good. Not yet. There you go. What is the vertex going to be? I told you. H always goes with X. H always goes with X. H is your X coordinate. So your X coordinate's 2. And your Y coordinate, there's not one, so it's 0. Focus. Well, you're going to have 4p is equal to what? 12, so p is going to be 3. All right. Does this one open right or left? How do you know? 12 is positive. 12 is positive right here. Don't look at this one, this one. 12 is positive, so it's going to open to the right. And so my focus has got to be to the right of my vertex, so I'm going to go 3 units. 1, 2, 3. So there's my focus. There's my vertex. And so my focus is going to be 5, 0. Directrix. 3 left, right? 1, 2, 3. So the directrix is going to be x equals -1. And your primary focal chord is going to be 12, which means off of my focus, I'm going to go 6 up and 6 down. And there we have it. Very good. I'm sure. But if I give you an equation, you should be able to graph it. Even if I give you something like this, you should know how to do this. Do you want to do this one? Or are we good? I can go through this one if you want me to. Yes, no? Good? Okay. So now what's going to happen is this. I'm going to describe a parabola to you. And guess what? You get to write the equation. You get to write the equation. So look at this. It says, find an equation of the parabola that satisfies the given condition. Your focus is -1, 0, and your directrix is equal to -1. Now, this is what I say. I say graph it. Graph it. You can graph this, okay? Watch this. If I have a graph, your focus is -1, 0. There's your focus. And your directrix is x is equal to 1. So which way is this thing going? It's going to the left, and my vertex is where? Your vertex, remember I told you at the very beginning of parabolas, your vertex is halfway between your directrix and your focus. Your vertex is halfway between them. So if there's 2 units from my vertex, if there's 2 units from my focus to my directrix, half it, and you're at the vertex. So my vertex is 0, 0. Okay, let me ask you this. What is P? P is 1. P is 1. Okay, one more time. Let me say that again a little bit slower and without people talking. If you know the focus and the directrix, put it on a graph. That will immediately tell you, as long as you graph it correctly, of course, that will immediately tell you which direction this thing is going. We know that this thing is going to the left. We know that it's going to open up to the left. Okay? So that tells you which equation on your cheat sheet is going to be your goal. If it opens to the left, all you have to do is look on this left-hand side and find the one that says opens left. Can you see it? Opens left. So now you know your goal. Y minus k, quantity squared, is equal to 4p times x minus h. That's your goal. How did I get that?
It's going left between these.
It's going left. How do I know it's going left?
Left.
I graphed it, and my focus is on that side of my directrix. Remember, your directrix is going to be behind you, so it's going left. And I look right here, and I say, oh, left. Oh. That's my equation right there. Y minus k quantity squared is equal to 4p times x minus h. That's my goal. Now, I need an equation, and on the test, I'm going to ask you, I think it says to write it in standard form. So that's easy. Write it in standard form. Okay. So let's start with what we need. We have y minus k, quantity squared is equal to 4p times x minus h. What is k? What is k? What is p? What is x minus, what is h? and simplify. It is. You're right. It's negative because it's going to the left. So you have y squared is equal to negative 4x. And you're done. So again, in order to write an equation for a parabola, you need to know the vertex and you need to know p. Big thing. You need to know the vertex and you need to know p. And you can find it in the middle. Try again. Yes. Find an equation of a parabola that satisfies the given conditions. All right, so let's put it on a graph. And now I don't have to give you the focus and the directrix. I could give you the focus and the vertex. I could give you the vertex and the directrix. You can still find p from that, right? If I give you the vertex, that's really easy. All you need is p, right? In order to write an equation, you've got to know p and you've got to know the vertex. Okay, the focus is 3, 4. So this is the focus. Label things so you know what they are. Your directrix is y equals negative 2. Y equals. Make sure you graph it correctly. If it was y equals, it's got to go through the y-axis. Okay? If you see y, it's got to go through the y-axis. So y equals negative 2. Okay. So I don't know the vertex yet. And I don't know p yet. But I do know what? Yes, but I know what else. It opens up. So what's my goal? What equation am I going to start with? If it opens up. There you go. And I know that because it opens up. Okay. The next thing I need to know, I need to know 2 things. I need to know vertex and I need to know p. Which one you want to give me? Okay, vertex. That's a smart choice. Where can I find the vertex? Halfway between. Split the difference. So how many units is it from my directrix to my focus? Well, I don't know. Let's see. 1, 2. I feel like the owl on licking the lollipop. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 to get to the middle. Just kidding. 6. But is that p? No. Half of that is where your vertex is going to be. So 1, 2, 3. So right here is your vertex. And remember, they all got to line up on your axis of symmetry. Okay, they've all got to line up on your axis of symmetry. So find the distance from your vertex to your focus. Well, snotty poo-poos. Find the distance from your directrix to your focus and half it. Okay? So P is 3. Yeah, I think I'm done. And what is the vertex? 3, 1. Vertex is going to be 3, 1. Now you're ready to write your equation. What are you going to substitute in for? H, K, and P. You're going to substitute in for H, K, and P. So we have x minus 3 squared is equal to 4 times 3 times y minus 1. And simple. Well, on the test it's going to say put it in standard form, so you don't have to do all the pulling out and stuff, just to save a little bit of time. So you have x minus 3 squared is equal to 12 times y minus 1. And that's all you have to do. You can stop. Because, like I said, the directions are going to say write it in standard form. But, for bonus points, if I said put it in general form, could you do it? On the left-hand side, you expand and full. On the right-hand side, you distribute, and then you move things around so it's set equal to 0. You can do it. Oh, Jiminy. Okay. Watch. If I ask you to do this, x minus 3 quantity squared is going to be what? And then distribute here, you're going to have 12y minus 12. And in order for it to be in general form, what? Has to be set equal to 0, so we would minus 12y and add 12. So that's going to go to 0. And then 9 and 12 is going to be what?
Are we adding, subtracting?
Well, it's 9 plus 12, right? So you have x squared minus 6x minus 12y plus 21 equals 0. You got it. So possibly, if I told you to put it in general form, you go to standard and then you just keep going with the algebra. Not that big of a deal. Not that big of a deal.